guys, this is Luke and welcome back to What's the Point Anyway? I hope you enjoy my chat with Craig Harper. This was a really cool chat. Craig's one of the most popular podcasters, if not Australia, probably even the world. He's interviewed a whole range of guests over his journey, 1,800 plus episodes, which is a little bit scary for me to even think about. He's got a really interesting perspective on life. He grew up pretty staunch Roman Catholic, then ended up sort of leaving that church in his 30s, being a successful businessman, a whole host of different careers, currently agnostic, but really sort of open-minded to different ideas, and by his own admission, he's continually sort of exploring where he sits on topics. He said at the end of the conversation he apologizes to any Christian guests for the language, so I better add that to the beginning. But look, he was really open, really honest, and I loved his perspectives. Hope you do too.
All right, mate, no worries.
How's things?
Yeah, good, and you?
Yeah, really good. Fantastic. Even though I've just been we're in St Andrews Beach. We've been here a couple of years, but we had an issue with the aircon in the car, so I've had to drive to Melbourne for 15 minutes and back.
Don't you hate that?
Good podcast listening time.
Whereabouts in St Andrews Beach, you?
We're near the Rec Club.
Oh, yeah, I know where that is.
You know the spot?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where are you? Your hand? Have you got a place?
Place in Andrews.
Right, okay. How often do you head down?
Yeah. Not often enough.
Yeah.
You might have to go around and check on it for me.
Yeah, I got a call from a mate a week ago. He's in Ryan. The alarm system was going off. He's like, "Can you go and check on the house?"
That's hilarious.
Well, mate, thanks for coming on. I was really keen to chat to you. I've listened to you before, and I only just put two and two together around who you actually were and what the longer term connection is. So, Mum is a massive fan of yours.
God bless Mum. What's Mum's name?
Marie Parker. So I think she used to go to Harper's gym. I reckon when I was like a 5-year-old.
Shout out to Mum. Hi, Marie.
Hi, Marie. So she's looking forward to this episode. But mate, I started to listen to you again when you interviewed Trevor Hendy. I think after the fact, but I had Trevor on the show, who was awesome. And in preparation for that, I was listening to a few of his interviews and listened to him with you. So you project's interesting. I'm blown away. You've done I love doing these podcasts. It gives me a chance just to chat to interesting people for an hour. What are you up to? Like 1,800 episodes?
Something like that. Plus I did three shows before that. Didn't really take. So what are we up to? Today, 1824, yeah.
1824. Good effort. What's been your favourite? Or is that
Are we recording it? I mean, are we doing the podcast yet, or are we just chatting?
We can give me that one off the record. You can give me that one off the record at the end.
Either. I mean, like, are we is this us, or are we?
We're rolling. If it's terrible,
sure,
if it's terrible chat, I'll cut it out and we'll start rolling. We'll start.
No, it's all good. It's funny you say that because I actually got asked the same thing 2 hours ago,
right?
Which I haven't been asked for a long time. But so Johnny Ruffo, who I loved,
yeah.
Johnny Ruffo, do you know who he is, or I should say was?
Yeah, so he was, former, what was he on, Australian Idol or one of those?
He's on one of those. He's been a singer, actor, done a bunch of stuff. Sadly passed away
a couple of years ago, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, a while ago.
Yeah.
He was amazing. I mean, I've had a lot. Like, I've had very few rubbish ones.
Yeah.
A guy called Mark Randolph, who set up Netflix, who created Netflix. He was a good dude. I liked him. You know, there are some people you think you're going to get on some big deal, and it's going to blow. Everyone's going to listen, and you're going to, we got this big name, and then it doesn't.
Yeah,
it's all right.
Yeah.
And then you get on people who no one's ever heard of, and they're amazing.
Yeah, agreed.
And it's a great story, and they're inspirational, and they're clever, and they've got lots of great ideas and strategies, and so it's there's no real rhyme or reason. I mean, I've had some rippers, and I have a guy called David Gillespie on.
Yeah.
He's one of the smartest people I know.
Yeah.
He's on every fortnight. He's a researcher. He's a lawyer. He's arguably Australia's biggest non-selling fiction author. We have great chats regularly. Yeah, and then, I mean, it's like a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. There've been some crap ones, but there've been a lot of ones that I really enjoyed and where I mean, as you kind of alluded to at the start, you're learning, it's like this is an opportunity for me to learn, and I'm chatting regularly with people that are smarter than me. And my background is in exercise physiology and exercise science and high performance and sport and teams and the general public and owning gyms and helping people get in shape. And then, I moved not out of that, but I started to incorporate, more mind stuff, brain stuff, human behavior stuff, and ergo my PhD in psychology. But, that whole kind of integration of body, mind, emotions, human behavior, thinking, psychology, physiology, what is success for me? Who am I? What are my values? What do I stand for? What am I doing that's working? What am I doing that's stupid?
Yeah.
Why do I do it? I'm just the whole human kind of adventure for me is interesting and fascinating.
Yeah. So the next question I was going to ask basically ties into ultimately the point of my podcast, the title of it, and usually what I open with. But I mean, a guy who's spent 1,824 episodes plus all the other things you do, just chatting to interesting people and picking their brains. Where's it left you on the answer to this question? What's the point anyway?
Yeah. See. Okay. So I think can I go the dark side for a moment?
Go for it.
I think the question needs more.
Yeah.
Like, what's the point of what? What's the point of life? What's the point of health? What's the point of relationships? Now, what's your point? What's Luke's point versus Craig's point?
Yeah.
Like, there's an underlying assumption that what's the point, which is singular.
Yeah.
There's an assumption that there's an underlying single point, which I don't think it's a great starting point question. And I think what is the point for me when I was 25 was not the point for me when I'm 60.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think it evolves over time.
Yeah.
I think that there's a point in your life when it's all about, what's the point? Oh, it's all about connection and building a relationship and raising a family and making dough and being a great dad or mum or whatever it is. And then, there are other times when if you ask someone at a certain point of their life, it might be building a business and brand and security for the future. And so I don't know that there's a single point, but it's a beautiful starting off or stepping off question. It's like, how many people, there's a concept I talk about called destination disappointment. How many people get where they wanted to go and then they're like, now what? Like, I lost 30 kilos, I'm light, I'm lean, I feel good, I look good, I'm healthier, but they still, it's not, maybe I need 3 more kilos. Maybe I need to, whatever. And it's like, now I earn $1 million a year.
Yeah.
And I'm still emotionally and psychologically not where I want to be. Maybe it's $1.5 million I need. Maybe it's 2. Now I'm at the top of the mountain, but I'm still disappointed. Maybe I'm on the wrong mountain. Maybe I need another mountain, right?
Yeah.
And I think that we try and resolve internal issues with external solutions.
Yeah.
I think it's, we focus too much on stuff, too much on things, too much on outcomes and numbers. All of those things matter, but they don't necessarily equate to Luke or Craig being happy and fulfilled and connected and not anxious and not overthinking and not depressed and not lonely and not disconnected.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's interesting. I mean, the guests I bring on are really diverse and wide. So and the answer is diverse and wide as well. There's some people that think there is a ultimate underlying point to life. And if it is singular and objective, then that's the point for everyone. Or there's at the other end of the spectrum, an answer might be the point is the journey, or the point is life is what you make of it. And therefore, by definition, it's very much an individual journey and it's evolving over time. I mean, your answer, as you spoke then, it reminds me a little bit of that old book, the Paulo Coelho book, like The Alchemist. People set a goal and they set somewhere they're going, and when they get there, they're often let down. They realize that it was all the steps along the process that were the good parts, not the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, it's like, what's the best diet? Or for who?
Yeah.
What's the best job? Like my best job would be most people's nightmare.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't had a job since I was 25. I worked for me for the last 36 years.
Yeah.
I have no holiday pay, no sick pay, no consistency of wage. It's unpredictable.
Yeah.
I could make X this month or I could make 10X.
Yeah.
And most people hate that uncertainty and that unfamiliar or that vulnerability. But I thrive in the middle of that, but I wouldn't suggest,
Yeah. Yeah, I actually heard, forget what the episode was, but I mean, it was, when I say recent ones, with you, it might have been 50 episodes ago, and that's actually not that long, but
yeah.
I think you spoke about the meaning of life, and you said that you've come to the realization that there actually is no definitive answer.
I think for most things, Luke, I mean, like, here's the thing, I don't know how many people listen to this, but let's say 1,000 people listen to this. So 1,000 people listen to the same conversation with the same blokes, but no one's having an identical experience because everyone's got a different processing filter. Everybody's got a different brain.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a different backstory. So we're hearing the same words said by the same guys with the same intent, but we're not having the same experience. So I think it's funny when we get all deep and philosophical about meaning, we feel compelled to have an answer.
Yeah.
Here's an idea. I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
I don't know. And if you think or I don't mean you necessarily, but it's like, well, I can tell you maybe what the meaning or the purpose of my life is, but then people talk about it like it's almost some preordained destiny, some cosmic kind of karmic thing that we need to find under some mythical rock and go, oh, here it is. I've discovered my destiny and purpose.
Yeah.
Now, maybe you just go, well, I've got these resources and I've got this brain and this body and this skill and this talent and this compassion and this energy. So therefore, with all of that, what I want to do is I want to teach and coach and mentor people to be, more effective at what they do, or I want to go and start a charity, or I want to become the best athlete on the planet, or, I don't know that it's a single thing. Yeah, and it's different for different people, I think. And even for the same person over time,
yeah,
it can evolve because as you change, then where your energy goes perhaps changes. What matters to you perhaps changes. What you think is really important. There's stuff that I thought was really important when I was 25.
Yeah.
I don't think it anymore. Not that I was right or wrong then or right or wrong now. It's just ain't the same. And like, I think with so much stuff, we humans, we feel like we've got to have an answer. We've got to know. We've got to know. What do you think? It's like, I've been asked this over, but I don't know, 1,000 times. What do you think happens when we die? I go, it doesn't matter what I think because I don't know.
And it's going to happen.
I go, you don't know, I don't know. No one knows, right? People go, oh, no, well, there's definitely, and I'm not saying there is or isn't a God or there's an afterlife or not. I'm not saying that. I'm saying we don't actually know because if we knew, then we'd have unequivocal proof and evidence and data and science, which is why we don't. And we call it faith, which is literally believing in something we can't prove.
Yeah.
So while it feels emotionally safe and comfortable for people to go, there definitely is this or there definitely is that, and I understand that because I understand the brain and the mind and the need for certainty, but the uncomfortable truth is none of us know.
Yeah.
I was raised in a very religious environment and I can quote scripture all day.
Yeah.
Like I literally studied the Bible for a very long time. And while there are certain things I wish or want or hope, the objective, uncomfortable reality is I don't know.
Yeah.
And so, in 2025, I feel like a lot of people are, for whatever reason, because of insecurity or because of ego or because they just think they're right or because, and it's not all bad motives, of course, but people feel compelled to have an unequivocal answer.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, like you think about how many times you've got shit wrong in the last year. I don't know. I've got 20 things wrong yesterday.
Yeah.
Why would I think today I'm getting everything right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I don't know. I've been understanding, or so I should say, studying humans my whole adult life. I I don't know 1% of what there is to know.
Yeah.
Like literally, I don't. I mean, my understanding, to me, it might seem significant, but in terms of what there is to know, it's a drop of water in an ocean of information and knowledge.
Yeah. Do you think there's
But the problem is people think their drop is the ocean.
Yeah. Do you think today is there any single thing you're certain of?
Death.
Yeah. Taxes.
But even then, physical death.
Yeah. Maybe yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's lots of things I want and hope, and I go, I think opening these conversational and philosophical doors is good because it's your thinking and it's very, I was going to say it's very something. So I'm going to start again. For me, it's very important that we think about how we think.
Yeah.
That we don't live in an echo chamber. That I don't think like Luke because I love Luke. Luke's my mate. Luke and I have been hanging out since we were 10, and I live in the Luke echo chamber. And so I just think what Luke thinks. Well, that's a dumb way to be. So you and I could be the best of mates who disagree on 13 different things.
Yeah. And
our friendship and our love and our whatever for each other is not dependent on agreement on everything. But we live in echo chambers and thought cults and ideological cults where I did an episode the other day called Sitting on the Fence.
Yeah.
And people often go, mate, don't sit on the fence. And I'm like, why not? That's like, you got to pick a side. I'm like, who said? What?
Yeah.
You said? Here's, Group A and Group B. I don't really resonate with either group.
Yeah.
I might start my own group. It might be called Group Z.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't want to be in a group.
Yeah.
Because as soon as I'm in a group, there's a price of membership.
Yeah.
It's like I've got to belong in the group. I've got to agree
conform
with the theology, the doctrine, and you go, oh, you're whatever. And I'm not saying groups are bad, but you're in this religion or you're in that corporate group or you're in that cultural group or social group or, even in the fitness industry where I grew up, it's like, mate, there are so many fitness cults where people, if you're not doing CrossFit, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
If you are doing CrossFit, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
If you're not stretching all the time or or if you're not lifting weights regularly, then you're this or that. And if you don't do, it's like same with food. There are food echo chambers, where like if you eat meat, you're a bad person, you're horrible. Okay. There's a fair few horrible people then because a fair few people eat meat.
Yeah.
But I understand that you don't, and I understand you don't want to, and I understand your values and I totally respect them. However, please don't try and make me be like you or me agree or conform with you. How about you don't eat meat and I will eat meat and we can still be friends? How about that?
Yeah. So it's a great, that for me, that evokes the feeling of the emotion of tolerance, which I think people speak about a lot, but is seldom practiced, to be honest. A lot of people preach tolerance and are extremely intolerant to people, it's tolerant within their window. But say with you, and I agree with so much of what you've said. How do you decide what you're going to stand for? Where do you put a stake in the ground? So no, this is a hill I'll die on, and this is a hill that this is something I'm willing to be sort of bent on.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think everybody needs to get clear about what their values are. Your values are the things that matter to you, really, really matter to you. So what matters to me is, and this will sound a bit bullshitty, but what matters to me is family. What matters to me is my mum and dad.
Yeah.
Especially as they get older. So looking after them, providing for them, caring for them, loving them matters to me. Like my values, another one of my values is health, wellness. Another one of my values is kindness. Another one of my values is service. And the reason that I say that is because the more selfish I am, which I can be selfish, the worse I am. I don't like me when I'm selfish. I'm an only kid. I tried selfish for quite a long time. I gave it a good crack. I'm actually quite good at selfish, but it makes me a shit human for myself and for others. So, generosity, love, kindness, all of those things which sound cheesy, but that's not to say being loving, kind, generous is being a doormat for someone else.
Yeah.
I believe that I think you need to be strong and resilient. I'm one of the least lazy people I know. Like, I'm not very talented. I'm not very gifted. I was a morbidly obese teenager. I was the fattest kid in my school. I was not a great student. I am not athletically gifted. I'm not creatively gifted. And so for me to do okay, I probably needed to work at 9 out of 10 where some of my mates were working at 5 out of 10 for me to get the same outcome.
Yeah.
But for me, being mediocre was ironically a gift because it built in me work ethic and resilience and mental toughness and all of those things, because I knew that if I ever wanted to be successful, whatever that means, I wasn't just going to end up there.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't just going to end up like commercially successful or athletically or, I was never, I would have to figure it out, be resilient, step up when some people would step down, embrace the pain, ask good questions, solve problems, and keep fucking going, right? And, it's like before my podcast, and this is not in any way a promo, but before my podcast, I did 3 other podcasts that didn't work. If we're talking about commercial viability, they didn't work.
Yeah.
And that was over about 2 or 3 years. And then I started my podcast, which I did 600 episodes, which cost me money.
Yeah.
So I lost money because I'm paying for a bunch of things. So I have 2 people that work for me, one full-time, one part-time, who produce and edit. And back in those days, we filmed everything and we did them live in studio with humans in studio, not via Zoom.
Yeah.
So I spent about 4 years trying to get this thing off the ground and losing money, and I wasn't very good at it. I was, if 10 out of 10 is my absolute potential, when I started, I was a 2. Well, okay. How do you become...
Can I just butt in for a sec? Can I just butt in for a sec there? When you started it, did you have a very clear goal in mind that you were working towards, or did you start it and you let it evolve?
Everything that I do, it depends on, that's a good question. But look, I wanted to do it for a bunch of reasons. One of them commercial.
Yep.
But another one was to, it's like, so my main job in inverted commas is corporate speaking, is working with teams and groups, companies, organizations, all that.
Yeah.
And this is, my podcast now, we go into about 90 countries. We have lots of listeners, and that's a pretty good business card or a pretty good brochure for your business.
Gives you authority to do corporate speaking. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it gives you leverage, and it gives you awareness, and it gives you brand exposure and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I knew it would do that, but I wanted to meet cool people and have good conversations and learn new things, but I also wanted to produce something that would be sponsorable and commercially viable. And I come from a background of working in radio. I worked in commercial radio for 15 years or so. And so I was used to being on a mic and used to having conversations, and I worked on talkback radio. So I was used to just banging on, you know, but I wasn't terrible when I started, but I certainly wasn't great. And so, whatever I'm doing, whether or not it's doing, postgraduate study and I'm not a brilliant student, I want to get through it and I want to do it as well as I can. If I'm learning how to do some tech thing and I'm not a natural tech person, I want to learn how to do it well. I don't want to be the best. I want to be my best. Like I'm 61, my chronological age is 61. And I think, and I've always thought this, since I was the fat kid who got in shape, I think, all right, well, with my body, with my genetics, with my potential, what's the best way for me to eat? The best.
Yeah.
For me. Not generically or broadly, but for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the best way for me to move and exercise? How much weight should I do? How much cardio should I do? And what about sleep? And what about supplements? And what about booze? And what about stimulants like coffee and tea and Coke? And so what I do is I've always tried to create an operating system where I think, well, I can get another business and another podcast and another car, but I can't get another body.
Yeah.
So how do I optimize the one that I've got? So everything that I do without being, obsessive is, especially when it comes to managing my health, is the best thing that I can do.
Yeah.
So I've never been high. I've never been drunk. I've never drunk alcohol. I've never had a cigarette. I eat 2 meals a day. I lift weights every day. And I don't do that because, I mean, some people would call that whatever they want to call it, right? Weird, obsessive. I'm cool with that. But the bottom line with that protocol is that my brain and my body work as well as when I was 30.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't know what my biological age is, but I would think it's somewhere in the low to mid 40s.
Yeah.
Right. And there's no ego in that. Just I've done lots of biological age tests on other people and I've had mine done, but not for a few years.
Yeah.
But, you know, so why wouldn't you want to get the most out of whether it's your talent, your potential, your genetics, your resources, the hours in a day? You know, that's just how I think.
Yeah. I think it's funny as you say that, and I say this in myself and I've seen it with guests. Like one of my recent ones was Ryan Leaf, who picked two, I don't know if you know his story, it's insane, but picked two in the NFL draft, quarterback for the San Diego Chargers.
Oh, yeah. Went to jail for a while?
Went to jail. Yeah, out of league in 4 years. Now, this is like an inversion of what we all think growing up, but I think natural talent's one of the worst things that someone can have, because when you can get away with doing things easy, you can fall into the trap of doing that. I mean, I've done it. I found, I mean, like things like school came really easily to me. So, you know, I got a good score, got into a good uni, sort of flapped my way through uni without doing all that much work. 5 years out of school, it was like the guys that were less talented were they were outperforming me because they taught themselves to work. Yeah, Ryan, the same story. He, you know, just found it very easy to throw a football. You know, he was always first picks, never had to sort of work hard to get to where he was. And then the moment which came in his third game in the league where he had to deal with adversity, he fell in a hole.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did you do at uni?
I did commerce at Melbourne, marketing, finance. I can't remember picking up a book the whole time there. I sort of just backed myself to get through based on things I still remembered from year 12. And it, you know, and it worked for me. But it's still a trait I deal with today that I can be lazy and get away with it. But I know I can't. You know, it catches up. I now know more than ever that it's just hard work and it's grind that gets success, not talent.
Yeah, look, I think it's a bit of everything, you know. I agree with you that it's primarily what you do with what you've got.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know, your potential, like what you're born with, your potential, your genetics, your IQ, your brain, I mean, that's a gift.
Yeah.
The skill that you develop, well, that's work.
Yeah.
You know, you can be proud of the skill, proud of the achievements, proud of what you do with what you've got. But what you've got, you can't be proud of that. You can just be thankful.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, yeah, I'm grateful for so much stuff. I'm grateful that my parents are 85 and still around.
Yeah.
You know, I think also, without being too weird, deep philosophical, but when you get a bit older, so many people get sick and die, of course.
Yeah.
And then, like one of my best friends in the world, someone I love very much, died a few days after Christmas. And on Christmas Day, I was sitting with her in a hospital, and she was probably about 72 hours away from passing away. And I was holding her hand and I was talking to her. And it's like, in that moment, and I know this is deep, but when you are with someone that you love and they're dying and you know that you're never going to see them again, and this is the last conversation, and you've known this person your entire life and you've loved them and they've loved you. So this lady was like my second mum.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I at times were more connected to her than my mum. And she used to call me her fifth kid because she has 4 daughters and me, right? And I remember talking to her and she said to me, like 3-4 minutes before I was going to go, she goes, you know how much I love you, right? And I just fobbed her off. I go, yeah, I know. And she's like, and she squeezed like frailest hands in the world, right? And she squeezes my arm as much as she could. And she made me look at her again, right? And then she said it again. And you're like, oh, yeah. So when you go like, what's really important, what really matters, it's like that. You know, for me, that love, that level of connection, you know, because and there's nothing wrong with being and doing, creating, but there'll always come a point where you go, none of that actually matters.
Yeah.
It kind of matters in the moment, but, my mate, my training partner, who's one of my best mates in the world, he died 6 years ago temporarily in the gym.
Yeah.
He had a cardiac arrest right in front of me. Dead, absolute dead, no heartbeat. He was dead for 17 minutes. So I worked on him straight away, and 17 minutes, I worked on him for 11 minutes, and then the ambos got there, and then they worked on him for another 6 and a whole bunch of stuff. And anyway, thankfully, he's still here. I'm seeing him in 2.5 hours to do a workout with him. But it's funny when someone that you love, when that happens, how meaningless and inconsequential and unimportant everything else is.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I'm not trying to be too weird and deep, but it's like sometimes we go, my God, this is so bad. My God, this is such a big issue. And this is and then you're like, is it?
Yeah.
Is it though? Is it? And I know we've got to do life, and I know we get caught up in the minutia, me as well. Sometimes I invent problems that don't even exist yet, right? So I still do it.
Yeah.
So I'm not being critical of anyone but myself. But it's like, yeah. And so I think as you go down all these philosophical and, emotional and psychological rabbit holes, it's interesting to come back to base and, love, connection, kindness, family, friends. Because as long as you're somewhere in that ballpark and you're getting boxes ticked and needs met on that level, then the other stuff matters, but not that much, I don't think.
Definitely. Yeah, I have you might know him. Do you know Ryan Trainer? Fellow sort of Bright.
I know of.
Yeah, fellow Bright, Hampton Brighton sort of guy, but I've worked with Ryan Heath.
I don't know him, but I know of him, yeah.
Yeah, he came on my show. He might have been my third or fourth guest, but he's been a mate for ages and, super successful entrepreneur, businessman. And so it must have been about 10 years ago now, his youngest daughter, he's CEO of a company he started at that point in time, got diagnosed with a form of cancer. And he said the same thing. He's like, I remember getting the call and looking at my calendar, which, as any founder, CEO looks at the calendar, it's jam-packed with important meetings, need to get this done. And I looked at it and none of it mattered. But you need those moments in time. And so as you were saying that, it made me think that one of the more common answers or themes that I think I pick up on a lot of the conversations I have is that most people, when they think about what the point is or what is important, from all different faiths, non-faiths, atheists, whatever it might be, relationships to me seems to be probably the most common theme that's there. And, different faiths or different worldviews have an explanation for why relationships are important. I mean, in a totally sort of existential world, it somewhat doesn't make sense. It would be more me. And I know, and I'd love, maybe after this, we'll circle back to your sort of journey growing up. And I know you grew up in a Catholic family, but where have you got to today in terms of how would you define your faith or, faith/religion?
Yeah. I mean, this is probably a whole show.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, so I grew up, So I grew up in an echo chamber of religion and theology and doctrine and behavior and rules and punishment and control and threats.
Yep.
So that's where I grew up.
Yeah.
And that was the Catholic bit. But, that was only a bit of it. Then when I was about 18, 19, I immersed myself I found myself in another church, which was a fundamental, for want of a better term, born-again Christian church.
Yeah.
Which is really fundamentally...
Yeah. Everything's literal. Yeah.
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 And then, look, there were bits of that were awesome.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, oh, poor me, I was indoctrinated. No, it's not that at all. Like,
yeah,
there's stuff in the Bible, some stuff that is amazing. And, there are experiences that I had in the context of church and my journey with other people, and that were, for me, fundamental and shaped me and, got me to look at myself in a way that I hadn't looked at myself before, and to learn about a little bit more about self-awareness and humility and accountability and a whole lot of things that really were not high on my list. And so there was a lot of good to come out of it. But I think the problem with any group of people, let's just say that, is that it's full of people.
Yeah.
So let's go a church, forget the building, let's call the church the people, right? Well, that's a bunch of people who have got egos and attitudes and beliefs and values and behaviors and idiosyncrasies and agendas. And so it's not that I think religion is of itself bad, but I think a lot of what comes out of religion, not because of necessarily the doctrine or the theology,
but the people
but it can be that.
Yeah.
Some doctrine is pretty fucking horrendous, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
But it's just people. Like, I've met Christians that are beautiful, amazing, gorgeous, and other people that are just fucking
self-righteous,
lying, conniving, narcissistic, controlling people who know a lot of scripture.
Yeah.
And I've met Buddhists who are beautiful, and I've met atheists who have got much more wisdom than any Christian I know, right?
Yeah.
Or it's not good or bad. It's just that. And so I think,
when did you leave that?
Again,
when did you leave the non-denominational
I probably
church?
was in and out of church till I was about 30.
Yeah.
But this is going to sound like bullshit, but I don't care. This is just true.
Yeah.
So I believe that most texts and most theologies talk about love. There's an underpinning message of love, right? And I think that while there's a lot of other variables, right, and we live in a world that is a bit terrifying at the moment, there's a lot of division. There's, all you got to do is go online and say, I think this, and you'll have 50% of people who hate you, 50% who agree with you.
I think the sky's blue and you're going to get people disagreeing with you now.
Yeah. So, but, and I don't know if the world will ever get to this. Sadly, I don't think so. But I know that all I can control is me.
Yeah.
And so what I do is I try and come from a place of love and kindness, and I fuck that up a lot.
Yeah.
I don't get that right often. But that is my mission. That is my aim, is to be a positive force in the world and a positive force in other people's lives. And sometimes I get it right and sometimes I don't. I'm not interested in philosophical or theological debates. I'm not trying to win anybody into my cult or my team or my tribe. I always say on my show, I'll tell you what I think and why, but you need to figure out what you think. Don't agree with me because I make sense or you like me. Agree with me because you've thought about what I've said, you've taken it for a test drive, you've done your own work and research, and then maybe you land at the same spot that I'm at or not.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. Yeah, I'm very much like a lot of what Jesus taught in the New Testament. I'm on board.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot. So I wouldn't call myself a Christian as much as I am a fan of the doctrine of Jesus at time, and again, what do we know?
Yeah.
But am I a good example or role model? No, don't fucking do. No, I'm shit. Don't pay attention to me. But I try to be that. And there are, I think we need to try to operate in self-awareness. And there's an area of research in psychology called metacognition that you may or may not know about. Metacognition is essentially thinking about thinking.
Yeah.
Trying to do a deep dive into, why do I think the way that I do?
Yeah.
And why are me and Luke in the same conversation but in a different experience?
Yeah.
Because it's not about where we're at or what we're doing. It's about how you and I both interpret this moment and give it meaning and tell ourselves a story.
Yeah.
And if you have 1,000 people listen to this, it's more than likely that someone's thinking, this is pretty interesting. And someone else is going, this is fucking confusing. And someone else is going, this is boring. And someone else has turned off, right? So it's really about how we interact with the world and how we create our own experiences. But back to your original question that I've meandered from.
It's been a great meandering.
It's love and kindness. It's not a religion. Like I don't want to belong to a group.
Yeah. Did you get? Because look, I mean, and I find it fascinating. I find people that grew up in the church and came out of it just as fascinating as I find the ones that grew up outside of it and came into it. And I'm interested in sort of, the process of why some went one way and some went the other. But I think as people have grappled with churchianity, I'll call it, there's two parts of it. There's the first is saying, hey, you know what? Like, I believe in the existence of God, but I don't know about this building or this set of doctrines or whatever, whatever it is. When you came out of it, where did you land on the God question? Because there's a lot of people that believe in God and just don't believe that God is knowable per se, or there's no doctrine that explains it. Did you end up agnostic, or did you end up atheist, that there is no God and this is just all just us trying to create meaning in something that's ultimately meaningless?
So I grew up with the, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that God, right?
Yeah.
The, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, John 3:16, the salvation scripture, all that, whole 9 yards. So that was the God that I knew, because that was the God that I'd been taught, and you're trained and told and taught and programmed and conditioned and coerced, right? Just like you are, the sky is blue. And we know it's blue because we got told a million times, and we can see, and we now identify that teaching with that color that we look at when we look up, right? So there's nothing in our brain that says that's not blue. So too, for me, there was nothing in my brain that went, there's not a God.
Yeah.
Because I know there's a God.
Yeah.
Because from when I could walk and talk and comprehend, I've been told about the blue sky and the God that lives up somewhere beyond the blue sky, right?
Yeah.
So, but what we're not taught, we're told what to think, Luke. We're not trained or taught how to think. Right? So I'm more interested in teaching people how to think for themselves, to think critically and to arrive at their own truth, whatever that is. Do I think there are some objective universal truths? Of course.
Yeah.
Jump off a building and see if gravity is not real.
Yeah.
That's real as fuck, right? So, of course, there are lots of things that are objectively true that I think any of us would agree on.
Yeah.
But then there are the other things where you go, I don't know. Is there a God? Is there the God that I grew up believing, the version of the God that I grew up believing? The truthful answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
Is there I'm not trying to be avoidant, but I just don't fucking know.
Yeah.
I'd love to go, I think there is. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Do I think there's I definitely think, and this could be wrong. See, this is an interesting conversation, beliefs and identity, because they're intertwined. But do I think there's an intelligence or a divine something that exists beyond human understanding and cognition and our version of intellect and our version of logic and our version of science and what is? I do think that.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong. And I just think that we think, what we think is vast knowledge is probably not vast at all.
Yeah.
I think we're also looking at everything as a species, 8 billion people, all the scientists, all the researchers, all the theologians, all the philosophers, all the sociologists. We're always looking at whatever it is we're looking at through the window of our own understanding. Well, that's a very fucking limited lens.
Yeah.
Because I'm a dumbass.
Yeah.
So me going, is there a God? Fuck, I don't know.
Yeah.
Do I want there to be a God that loves me and cares about? Yeah, of course I do.
Yeah.
That's great. Gives me great comfort.
Yeah.
Is it true? I don't know. And so, but I think the brave path to take, not saying I'm brave, but is to go, this is what I believe, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
See, the problem is that there are, even with this God discussion, there are 12 major religions and minor religions. Pretty much every religion thinks they're the one true religion.
Yeah.
And when you think that the way that we think and the way that we worship and our theology is the one true, whatever, then you concurrently think that everyone who doesn't agree with you in the world is wrong.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty arrogant for a faith that's meant to be rooted in humility.
Yeah.
Or a belief system that's all about humility. And, it's like, that seems kind of arrogant.
Yeah.
So, and I think also we get too Like there are a lot of people who are religious in inverted commas. If there's a God, there's a lot of people who are religious who are nowhere near God, in my opinion, Your Honor. And there are a lot of people who've never set foot in church who are probably more connected to God than a lot of people. But that doesn't fit well with the group thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And so I like your answer. I think saying I don't know is, I love having guests on the show that answer any of the questions with I don't know. I wish those 3 words were something we heard more of in the world, because I don't know shows a willingness to learn something new in future. It moves you out of that sort of fixed mindset. I'm doing a show next week with a guy called Alan Bondar. I think he was a Baptist pastor. Anyway, now he's a staunch atheist and would answer the question differently. So he wrote a book called, I think it's called How to Kill God the Easy Way. So he's gone, the other end of the spectrum, saying there absolutely is no God. I mean, he's as fundamental as the fundamentalist Christian, just taking the other side of the fence. But I mean, the funny thing, and you wouldn't remember this from the Bible, but the fundamentalists hate this. But the reality, the Bible, mate, the one time it really sort of explains what faith is, it's like it's this, the evidence of the things unseen. It's the substance of the things hoped for. It's a Christian has faith in something. It's not a doctrine of proof. It is those who walk in faith. And I think people are really, I see it with Christians and I see it with atheists. A lot of Christians will try to argue that no, it's all proof. It's all provable. It's like, well, your own doctrine says it's not provable. It says that your faith is something that you walk by without sight, without evidence. But people love to be able to explain everything themselves.
Yeah, that's because people are insecure, I think.
Yeah,
And Luke, people want to be right. And I understand that. People don't want to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
And the thing is, by the way, if any religion had absolute objective proof, well, that would make faith redundant.
No point of faith. Absolutely no point of faith.
Well, you're like, you don't need faith anymore because you've got knowledge.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, can I see the data, the evidence, the knowledge? No, you can't.
Yeah.
Okay, I just know.
Yeah.
Well, I just know, and I know you believe you know, and that's cool. Don't confuse what you believe with what is. You can believe that gravity isn't real, but doesn't mean that it's not real. It just means you believe that. And this.
There's a lot of guys. There's a lot of guys that don't believe in gravity. In the whole sort of in the whole truth movement, they believe it's density, not gravity. If you speak to any guys that hold to the flat Earth view, they'll say gravity is not real; it's density.
I think they're just moving the physics deck chairs, right? It's okay. That's okay.
So there is, back to our point before, there is disagreement on everything, even the one thing you're using to say is the one objective truth.
100%. Yeah, of course. Like, what do we, and then if you talk to somebody else, even we're not real, we're just in a simulation.
Yeah. I've got a guy I'm speaking to that I'm going to bring on that's his worldview.
Yeah. Like the funny thing is about really hardcore atheists is they get quite religious about their atheism.
Extremely religious. Yeah.
It's ironic. And but bless his little socks.
Yeah.
And who knows? He could be 100% right and we could be 100% wrong or some version of, the thing is, the challenging thing is that we are probably more emotional than logical creatures than we are logical. And, so when you believe something, your emotions are intertwined with that. And quite often your identity is intertwined with that.
Yeah.
And so if I know, like a really easy for me example to illustrate is, so when I was younger and I was growing up in fitness, health, wellness, owning gyms and all that stuff, we used to talk about the food pyramid, which was in inverted commas science.
Yeah.
And it was the gold standard.
Yeah.
And we spoke with absolute certainty about, this high watermark of eating, which was called the food pyramid. And then for reasons I won't go into, but they are fascinating reasons, we kind of found out that the research and how it all happened and how the food pyramid came into being was bullshit.
Yeah.
And
it was a Seventh-day Adventists or something were involved in that, weren't they?
No, not in that one, in another one. But
Right.
there was a guy called Ansel Keys who ended up being something of a fraudster.
Yeah.
But he was a scientist, a researcher, but he did a study. He was trying to figure out who were the healthiest populations in the world, and he started off looking at 21 countries.
Yeah.
And so he had a hypothesis, which was more than this, but it was in a way, it was like low-fat eating equals low-fat people.
Mm.
Or in other words, cutting out fats and saturated fats and lots of meat and nuts and butter and cutting all that out was the key, right? So low-carb eating. Sorry, high-carb eating.
High carb, low fat. Yeah.
Low fat, low protein.
Yeah.
But mainly low fat. But anyway, so he did all this research, and of the 21 papers, 14 of the papers, so 66%, give or take, refuted his hypothesis, and the rest were a little bit like on the borderline. So he cut the 14 countries out of his study and then said, I did a 7-country study. And, it's pretty well documented. But there was a lot of skullduggery and bullshit. But anyway, my point is that for a long time, that's what I thought was true and real, and that was what I taught. That was how I advised people. We had every gym and every dietitian and every school almost had a food pyramid somewhere on the wall. And here it is, you eat lots of this and less of that and less of that and hardly any of that. But that was all misleading. But at the time, that was what we called unequivocal science.
Yeah.
And people would get quite hysterical defending it. And the problem with that is when you've been a food pyramid, and it could be anything because it's just an ideological stance, but when you've been a food pyramid person for 30 years and you've taught and told and trained thousands of people, then you realize that you've been wrong, fuck that, then I'm just going to be critical of whoever's critical of the food pyramid.
Correct. You double down on keeping it going.
Yeah, I know I'm right. It's like, but sorry, Brian, you don't.
Yeah.
So that, even when I talk about God and church, there's part of me that is quite uncomfortable and feels guilty. And I understand where that comes from.
Yeah.
Because I spent most of my life, or at least half of my life, with absolute non-negotiable, like absolute unequivocal
certainty,
belief, and certainty. And you go, oh, could I be wrong? I could be.
Yeah.
Did I get something wrong in this podcast? Probably 3 things.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Yes. Yeah, like you said before, here's an idea. If you don't know, say I don't know. You don't have to pick a side.
Yeah.
You don't have to know.
Have you always been the sort of person that has that philosophy where you're like, I could be wrong here? Or did you have a few hard lessons later on in life that taught you humility around that?
I was open-minded-ish, but not like I am now.
Yeah.
And because I grew up in my own echo chamber, right? So I, confirmation bias, where you only pay attention to what confirms what you already think.
Yeah.
So if you think like me, then I'm going to like you more.
Yeah. If
you don't think like me, I'm not going to like you as much because you're going to challenge my thinking. And by the way, you'd be wrong, of course, because I'm right, So, yeah. And I mean, I think without being too weird and deep, I did a big stock take on my own life and my own reality and existence when I was in my early 30s.
As you came out of the church.
Yeah, but probably a couple of years later. I was already doing quite well. I owned 3 gyms and I owned 2 other bricks and mortar businesses. So I had 5 standalone premises and I had about 100 staff, and all the businesses were making money, and I was writing for the Herald Sun, and I was working on radio, and I was doing lots of cool things, and I had lots of nice stuff, right?
Yeah.
And in the middle of all of those things that were going well, I was probably less happy than I'd ever been in my life. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting, which is not to say that what was going on caused the lack of happiness.
Yeah.
But it was just interesting. It was an awareness for me that, I'm living in a nice house and I've got all these businesses and I'm in good shape and I've got biceps on my eyelids and I'm making good dough and all this great shit's going on. why do I overthink everything? And why am I somewhat sad or disconnected or anxious or depressed? Not darkly and deeply, but periodically.
Yeah.
Like from the outside looking in, most people would have said he's doing really well.
Yeah.
They would have said, wow, he's successful. But the inside out experience was not that.
Yeah.
So I just started to question things and think about things like, what is my purpose? And I realized that while I'm not bad at making money and building businesses and being an entrepreneur, it's not my priority.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, I could have ended up, I don't know, opening 20, 30, 40. I mean, I had 5 bricks and mortar businesses when I was 30.
Yeah.
Maybe 29.
Yeah.
And then I reckon I could have 30 or 40 by the time I was 40 if I wanted, maybe not. But it just didn't do it for me. And the stuff that did do it for me really didn't necessarily correlate with anything commercial at all. So
was that more in terms of service?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, what is aside from religion, what is spiritual wealth? What is social wealth? What is emotional wealth? What is cognitive wealth? What is psychological or mental wealth? What are these things? What does that even mean? What does that look like for me? Like, why have I got all this money and all this misery? What is that about? And when you lean into that, and which is, like I said, it's not to say one caused the other. And it's not to say you can't build a brand and business and lots of dough and be happy. Yeah, of course it doesn't. But that was just my experience.
Yeah.
And I think I was too externally focused.
Yeah.
So I was all about, in our culture, you think if somebody's talking about a successful person, they're never talking about the person who lives in a 1-bedroom flat and drives a 20-year-old car, but they're wildly happy and content and fulfilled. They're never talking about that person.
I told the story that when my daughter was born, I bought all these books. They're called Little People, Big Dreams, and it's a little children's book about the story of successful people. And it's all that movie star, actor, business person, philanthropist, scientist, or whatever. And then I sort of had I became Christian 3 and a bit years ago. And then just having kids made me really think about life. And I came to that same realization. I was like, these people aren't successful. They may be, but we're thinking about success in the wrong way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's you and me, right? And other people might go, success for me is, and I would go, cool.
Yeah.
You're not right or wrong. I'm not better or worse. We just, at where you're at and where I'm at right now, I was talking to somebody before and I said to them, if somebody said to me, Harps, tonight you can go to Rod Laver Arena and you can talk to 10,000 people for free, or you can walk across the road and talk to 20 people for 10 grand, I'm going to go to Rod Laver Arena for free.
Yeah.
Because I want to be able to connect with 10,000 people.
Yeah.
I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to, whatever gifts I have, which are not many, but whatever knowledge, whatever gift, whatever skill I have, I want to invest that in people.
Yeah.
Which sounds cheesy and cliche, and I get it, and I understand if people don't believe that, that's okay. But, and this is going to sound, it's probably a dangerous thing to say, but what I don't need, if we're talking about an absolute need, what I don't need is lots more money. Yeah? Doesn't mean I don't need money to pay the bills, but I was once quite motivated by money.
Yeah.
I'm not anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it matters. I want to pay the bills. I want to pay Melissa, who's my business manager, and Tiff, who works for me doing editing and things.
Yeah.
I need to pay them and look after them, and I need to look after me. But I'm the lowest maintenance bloke. Like you heard, don't drink, don't smoke, don't socialize.
Cheap way to live.
I'm finishing my PhD. All I do is work and study and go for a run and go to the beach, which is 600 meters away, and go to the gym and lift heavy shit once a day. And I'm cheap in terms of maintaining my life. It's not expensive. So I don't need heaps of dough,
Yeah. Mate, it's been great to chat to you. I really appreciate your perspectives and the way you go about it. Obviously I'll put in the show notes all the links to your podcast and so forth. But I guess final question, what's the main things on your plate now?
So I'm stumbling towards the finish line of my PhD, and we're recording this
14th of
mid-March-ish, 10th of March. And so I hope to have my PhD finished around June, July. After that, I'll tell you know what I'm going to do? This is a fun thing. I'm getting a puppy, Luke. I'm very excited.
Do you know what sort?
I'm getting a puppy because, hey.
Well, I was actually chatting to my wife earlier. She's throwing that idea around. We haven't spoken about a puppy in 5 years, but.
Yeah, so I don't have time right now to train a puppy properly because my life is a bit chaotic. But once I've finished with my study, then also I live by myself. So perfect, like the dog will get lots of attention. The dog will get lots of walks.
Yeah.
I've had dogs before, but I haven't had a dog for over a decade.
Yeah.
So just, it's like, yeah, probably in no hurry to go and tick a lot more. But like I've got commercial things I've got speaking gigs booked for the next 18 months.
Yeah.
So there's always stuff in the pipeline. But in terms of hustling, grinding, growing, building, yeah, there's no hurry.
Mm-hmm.
It's no hurry at all. I can sit out in my garden. I've got about 1 million bamboo trees and just sit in the bamboo and just read or listen to something, and I'm having a great time. So
yeah,
I'm not that. I'm probably more curious than I am ambitious at this stage.
What are you most curious about?
Human potential.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what we can do.
Yeah.
What we can do when we get out of our way.
Yeah.
What I can do, what you can do.
Yeah.
And it's tough because what's tough and it's not, but I think for most people, and this is very much a generalization, everybody, this is not based on research. This is based on anecdotal evidence and my background training 50, 60,000 PT sessions. I think the biggest practical challenge for people living in relative first world luxury, so let's discount people living in absolute poverty and the story would be different there.
Yeah.
But for us, I think our biggest challenge is managing our mind.
Yeah.
How do I manage my mind? Because my mind is the control room for my life.
Mm-hmm.
It is my operational HQ. And if you can't manage your mind, you can't manage your choices, your reactions, your behaviors, and by virtue of all of that, your outcomes. So trying to understand your mind, and my PhD is essentially in a version of that. Trying to understand your mind and manage your mind and have your mind work for you rather than you work for it, and understand that you are not your mind and it is not you, and finding the space between it and you. And I know we're getting weird now, but that I meet people all the time, Luke, who are way smarter than me and more talented than me, who are just not using any of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I feel I really want them to do well.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing your insights with my audience. If I can point a few of them your way, then that's a blessing out of this, and I look forward to following it, and all the best for the next, what is it? March, April. Well, we got a couple of months, and the rest,
2 months.
Knock over the PA.
Thank you, man. And to all your Christian listeners, I apologize for the swearing.
I think any of my listeners are pretty used to that. Don't worry.
Perfect. All right, mate.
Thanks,
Thank
mate.
you. Good luck with the show and good luck with everything.
Good man. Thank you.